Welcome everybody. You're listening to Yaron Brook Show on the Blaze Radio Network, and thank you all for being here. Whoops. All right. And we've got, looks like everything's working, surprisingly. Recently it hasn't, so this is a good sign. Today's show is a living objectivism show. So it's longer than the typical news shows, and what I want to do today is I want to catch up on basically some housekeeping, um, because in the Patreon drive, I made a bunch of promises to people who contributed, and today we're going to fulfill one of those. So let me just run by some of the things that are being promised through Patreon and where we are in terms of fulfilling those promises. Those who contribute $10 or more a month get to contribute show ideas, and then they get a vote. Everybody who does that or more, they get to contribute show ideas and vote on which ideas I should talk about. So we're actually going to do that today. And now the ideas turned out to be more like questions than really ideas. So what we're going to do is we're going to run down a number of these ideas, not just one of them, because I don't have enough to say about any one of these for a whole show. Although who knows? We'll see. We'll get started and we'll see where it takes us. 25 and above, you get a monthly non-public YouTube podcast. So it'll appear on Patreon. Only those who gave $25 and above will be able to participate and ask questions and listen in live. And that we will schedule for next week sometime. The rest of you will be able to listen to it, but after the fact. So anybody who gave 25 or more, you'll be able to participate in this live event. And that'll be next week from my new undisclosed location, which you will hear about next week. All right, then $50 and above, you get... what do you get? You get priority Q&A. I don't think we've done that yet. So that's something that we have to work on and make happen. And so I apologize, but that's something we have to figure out. So when I do a Q&A show like last week, you all get priority on which questions get asked. So you get top priority. And then the $100 and above, you get a Google Hangout with me, limited to 10 people. So, and that's happening, I think, tomorrow. No, not tomorrow, Thursday. That's happening Thursday. And then those of you who give 250 and above, you guys get one-on-one time with me, 15 minutes, just me and you, one-on-one, whatever you want to talk about. And that we're going to be scheduling over the next couple of weeks. So this week, later this week, and into next week. So if you've given $100 or given $250 or more, then expect to be hearing from us. Now, of course, if you haven't yet given $100 or $250, you still can, and we'll still rope you into this month's Google Hangout or one-on-one time. And if you haven't given anything, then it'd be nice if you did it before the end of the year. That would be terrific because, hey, it would be great at the end of the year to have a good number. Right now, we have 238 patrons contributing $3,138 a month. That's a good sum, but it's just over half of my first goal, which is 6,000, and short of my ultimate goal, which is 20,000. So we still got some work to do. We'd like to double the number of people, double the amount of money. I'd say in the next fewer than 6 months. Hopefully, in the next 2 to 3 months, we can double the amount of money and get to my first level goal that we need to get, where we really push out marketing for these shows. All right, so let's get right into it. We've got all that. Let me see if there's any other housekeeping. Just to let you know, tomorrow we'll do a news briefing. It'll be at 6 p.m. Pacific time, so 9 p.m. East Coast time. And then on Thursday, we'll do the same thing. We'll do a news briefing. I think it'll be at 6 p.m., but stay tuned on that. Friday, I've got I'm taping for broadcast later, another Living Objectivism. It'll be an interview with Professor Tara Smith, on the topic of happiness. So that'll be a blast. So that'll be on YouTube and on Blog Talk, and that'll be coming either late this week or early next week. And then next week, who knows what will happen next week. Next week, I'll be in my new location, and who knows if I'll have everything set up, and if the internet will work, and if my computer will work, and my monitor will work. Everything is new. Everything's going to be different. So it'll be a great way to start the new year in a new location with new equipment, new life. And I'll tell you more about that when we get everything hooked up and start broadcasting early next week at the beginning of the new year. All right, so I've got a list of these topics that people have both proposed and then voted on. So these are topics that people have voted on. I'm not going to do it quite in the order in which they voted, just because I'm going to start with the one that was got the second most votes, because it just doesn't fit with the others. Do you ever do that? Sesame Street? Fit with the others? One of these things just doesn't belong, something like that. I was brainwashed when I was little. There was no Sesame Street when I was little. This must have happened when my kids were little. That's what it was. It was my kids were little. That's when I picked up the Sesame Street stuff. All right, so I'm going to start from a topic that's not... Well, there are three topics really here, in a sense that there's a lot of politics, which is pretty typical. There's one on relationships, and there's one on passion and work and career. So I'm gonna start with the sex, then go to politics, and then go to passion and a career. How about that? All right. So that way you've got a clear map of what we're going to cover in the next few minutes, or next hour or so. So the first one is, all right, why are romantic relationships so valuable for an egoist? And what might be my advice on this topic? So now I'm a romantic, giving advice on romantic relationships. So let's start with why romantic relationships are so valuable. And again, the context is to an egoist, not to an altruist, or not to somebody who's not a thoughtful egoist. So what is it about a relationship, a romantic relationship specifically, with somebody that is so important to an egoist? And it has to do with values. An egoist pursues his values that he has identified, he or she, and I'm going to use he here because it's too confusing otherwise, but anyway I put in he, could be she, that an egoist is a value pursuer. An egoist has a clear hierarchy of values. He is a thinker. He is somebody who has examined his own motivations, his own character, and his own passions. Understands the values that he thinks will make him happy, and that he is in pursuit of. And what a romantic partner does for one, or what any love relationship, put aside for a minute the romance side, is that it reflects back to an egoist the values that he most cherishes. So whatever your value hierarchy is, what you're looking for in a love relationship is somebody else who shares some of those values, who lives some of those values, and then therefore in their living, in their being, in their existence, reflect back to you that kind of combination of values. And it what it is really an affirmation of you. In a sense, what you're looking at, not as somebody who's like you, because most couples I know, particularly successful couples I know, are very different. in some regards, but in other regards, the important regards, particularly intimately, they are very much attuned to one another. They reflect one another's values. They're attuned to one another's values. So what you get is a reflection of your own values back to you in a package, if you will, that's completely different from you. It's an affirmation of your own life, and that's the sense in which it's egoistic, right? It's affirming your own life, and it's affirming your own value. And that experience of experiencing the pleasure, the satisfaction of achieving your values, of living your values, and seeing them in another person, seeing them lived, experienced, is just a fantastic and one of probably the most powerful emotion one can experience, or one of the most powerful emotions one can experience. So it is an incredible emotional, spiritual experience to, again, see those values reflected in somebody else. All right. Think of, if you've read Atlas Shrugged, and I hope you all read Atlas Shrugged, think of what Reardon sees when he sees Dagny for the first time. And of course, he's not just seeing a physical person. He knows it's Dagny Taggart. He's never met her before, but he knows what she's done, what she represents. He sees how she holds herself. Now, that's an example of love at first sight, but think about how they relate to one another, the experience of finding somebody who is an equal and yet different, a passionate valuer, somebody who pursues, not necessarily the same concrete values, but broadly the same principles. So now, why is this so important? It's so important because it's this incredibly positive experience. It's incredibly emotionally rewarding. It's incredibly rewarding spiritually. It feels good. It feels great. It feels fantastic. And we're striving towards a state of happiness that is partially reinforced by experiencing these positive, fulfilling, long-term, pervasive emotions. And love is certainly one of those. And love for a romantic partner is the peak of those. And then one aspect of a romantic partner is sex, is the ability to have an experience, sex with that person. Now, sex can be enjoyable with, I won't say with anybody because that's not true, but with quite a few people. It's not like you have to be, I don't know, it doesn't have to be the love of your life in order to enjoy sex with somebody. You can get pleasure out of sex from somebody who you like. You don't have to romantically love them. But when you add up the romantic love and you add the sex onto it, then it's a whole different level of experience. It's far more substantial. It's far more of a spiritual vis-a-vis a physical experience. It is the greatest feeling, the greatest experience in the world in terms of something you experience in a moment. There's nothing that matches that. All right, so let me I know that people on the chats are asking questions and stuff that are not, don't ask questions because I'm not going to answer them. And don't ask questions about stuff that's irrelevant, right? Because that's just distracting and it's useless because I don't want to talk about that. Those of you calling in, only call in right now if you're asking a question about the topic. Otherwise, don't call in. So if you want to uncall, just press 1 and wait in the queue. And when I reach a topic that is more appropriate for your question, then you can press 1 again. But in a sense, 1 mutes you away from the queue. Pressing 1 again puts you back. All right, so everybody's gone away. Nobody wanted to ask a question on romantic relationships, objectivism, and sex. Uh, a productive individual, a rational individual, an egoist works amazingly hard, is involved in thinking constantly and producing and building and making. It's exhausting. It's very tiring, and often the culture and the people around you don't appreciate what you do. Having somebody who sees what you do, sees you for who you are, sees the effort and the achievement and values it, is just an incredible fuel for your own life. It's an incredible fuel for living. It's an incredible fuel for, for achieving your own success. So for not giving up, for pushing forward, for working, for continuing to work hard. It's part of the reward of being successful is the identification of somebody you love identifying your success. All right. Why do you think people continue to ask about relationship and sex when it comes to objectivism? Do you think it's because they think those that live by the philosophy are far and few between? No, so this is a question asked by Penny. I think that people continue to ask about this, A, because they don't always hear the answers, but I think because relationships are hard and they require real focus. And there's so much in the objectivist literature about productive work and working hard, about the heroism of the businessman. And so many people are, a mind-body kind of split, like Yaron was, if you remember. And they take objectivism seriously when it comes to their work. And they work really hard, and then they don't invest anything in developing real relationships and in developing relationships with other people and developing friendships and in developing sexual relationships and romantic relationships. And that just frustrates them, and then they blame objectivism for it. So I think there's a huge, because there's so much emphasis on productiveness, it's a virtue, and we all talk about business and the virtue of business, that people neglect their own psychology. They don't introspect enough. They don't carve out enough time to develop friendships and sexual relationships with people that they like or love. And then what happens is, like Yaron, they fall onto this idea that sex is just instinctual, it's primal, it's got nothing to do with love, and therefore one should just have sex with anybody, one night stands, brothels, whatever works, right? And again, when that is empty, unsatisfying, when it ultimately is a reflection of yuck, they don't like themselves for doing it, then they again tend to blame objectivism for it because, well, you said sex was good, and you said I had to work so much and I don't have time, and there's always an excuse, right? So I think that's the best I can come up of why it comes. I also think that it's just hard, right? There are not a lot of us, not a lot of objectivists, mostly men. There are not enough female objectivists. And, it's frustrating because the guys are looking for a romantic relationship, and if they limit themselves to it has to be an objectivist woman, there's just not enough supply to match demand. So they look outside of objectivism, which they should. And then it becomes hard because even outside of objectivism, it's hard to find somebody because, what do you do? How do you find somebody who matches your values, who is going to reflect back to you the kind of values that you need for a true romantic relationship? So it's complicated. It's hard. So I understand why people keep asking about it, because it's very hard. And the culture sends very, very, very mixed messages. On the one hand, it says anything goes. right? Be promiscuous. Sex is, sex is just animalistic. Do it. And there's pornography everywhere. And everything is trying to appeal to sex. And sex is viewed as purely materialistic in the culture. On the other hand, the Christians out there saying, oh, sex is the origin of original sin or whatever. Sex is really dangerous. So you can only have it after you, like Ben Shapiro, you can only have sex after marriage. And so it's confusing to a young person. What are they supposed to do? And Ayn Rand has real guidance here about sex being wonderful, sex being good. I've said in the past, don't get married without having sex. So that would be my guidance. Sex is an incredibly important part of a romantic relationship. So make sure that if you're committing to a romantic relationship for a big chunk of your life, that you're compatible and you enjoy having sex. And it's not automatic that if you love somebody, the sex is going to be great. What you need to find somebody is somebody that you love and where the sex is great. So there's a lot of components to this, right? It's complicated. It's hard. I don't have a huge amount of advice. You asked, what might Yaron's advice on this topic be? My advice is spend time on it, right? Invest in it. Don't be passive. Be active. Just like you're active in searching for your dream job. Just like you're active in, pursuing your career. Just like you're active in trying to write the best program you can write, or whatever your job is. You should take romantic relationships just as seriously. And you should go out there and invest just as much thought and just as much time and just as much energy in finding one. And trying and failing can be kind of fun too, right? Again, interacting with other human beings should, for the most part, be fun, both physically and emotionally and spiritually. I mean, don't do stupid stuff, right? But so I think people don't invest the time in it and don't think about it and don't consider it and think about what you want in another person. That's the other thing. People just leave it a chance. Oh, I'll meet the person. It'll just click. I mean, work on your own values, work in your own hierarchy of values, and then ask yourself, what kind of person would you want to spend decades of your life with? What kind of person would you want to really share a life with? And think about it, right? Everything else we think about it. And I think if you think about it and you integrate it, you'll better integrate it into your values. You'll better integrate it into your emotions, into your subconscious, and therefore into your emotions. And you'll be more in sync in terms of your emotions and your explicit values. I mean, this is the other problem people face, is that they don't spend the time, and therefore their emotions might be a mess. Their emotions don't have, their emotions are not completely lined up with their values and with their thinking, and as a consequence, they get mixed signals between their mind and their emotional responses. Right? So try to if the more you think about it, the more you integrate, the more aligned your emotions will be with your cognition. I don't know, somebody's saying I'm too loud. I lowered the volume a little bit right now. I can't calm myself. This is how I speak. This is I get passionate about stuff. It's not interesting for me if I have to talk in a calm, mild voice. All right, let's see. Now again, callers, I assume you're calling about the topic. If you're not, press 1 and you drop off my queue. And then later on you can press 1 again to get in the queue. Those of you who have all right, so you guys, I assume, are calling about the topic. All right. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Leo.
Hey, Leo. How's it going?
Good to hear you. I'm a big fan.
Oh, thanks.
So my question for you was your thoughts on how polyamory could work with being an objectivist. Or is that just too far? Is that the bridge too far?
No, 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 that's fine. No, you're just going to get me in trouble. That's all. Um, what is what is
I feel like I'm
polyamory?
leading you down a burning hallway, sir.
What's that? Say that again.
I feel like I'm leading you down a burning hallway
Yeah,
with
yeah.
these
This is
questions, but yeah.
dangerous stuff. Dangerous stuff. So polyamory is having um, multiple relationships at the same time, multiple
Yes,
long-term
sir.
relationships, right? At the same time.
Yeah, for myself personally, yes.
Yeah. That's my understanding. And it's not just being in love with two people, or maybe being in love with three people, or maybe having a whole family where people are. So I mean, put it this way. Let me put it this way: to have a great romantic relationship. So we'll start with this, and I should have mentioned this earlier. One has to have really good self-esteem, and that's really a primary for a really healthy, positive, good relationship. One has to have fantastic self-esteem, and it's part of what you're looking for in a partner is somebody who also has really great self-esteem. I think to entertain polyamory, one has to have super self-esteem, which most people, including most objectivists, don't have. And I also think that ultimately it doesn't work. So, but I'm not saying you can't try it or don't try it because I think you have to discover that it doesn't work. I don't think you can take my word or anybody else's word it doesn't work. And I don't see anything wrong morally with trying it as long as it's all up front. There's no hidden agenda. There's no hiding. There's no pretend. As long as it's done honestly and everybody's participating in a knowing way, then I don't see any moral problem with it. Other than I think it ultimately doesn't work. That is, I think that ultimately our focus in that sense, our sexual and relationship, and I think it's a lot of work. And I think that if you're a productive person and you've got to juggle three relationships, you're not going to make it. I mean, I,
Yeah,
I just
I
I
work
just
about
don't.
100 hours a week.
What's that?
So yeah, I'm a tattoo artist and I work about 100 hours a week.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
I'm one of the most productive people I know.
yep,
I'm an objectivist,
yep.
and I'm very upfront about who I am, what I believe, and that right there will usually make you fairly undateable
Yes,
uh,
exactly. So
because
you've
you're
already
not.
cut down on the number of people at any given time. But yeah, so I think that it to even try it requires immense self-esteem, and since your partner probably won't have it, that'll probably be a barrier. And if you go into it announcing this is what it's going to be, then you might never get into those relationships to begin with, and you might blow a relationship that could be a great monogamous relationship. But generally, my view is that it just doesn't work because I just don't think that we have enough mental, emotional, cognitive space in a given a there's a famous science fiction writer who writes a lot about these kind of arrangements. That is Robert Heinlein, and
Mhm.
if you read his books, and one of the premises in a whole series of his books is that the hero of the book never dies. So he has infinite
Right.
amount of time. And yeah, if you've got infinite amount of time, you can have lots of relationships sequentially all at the same time, and you can do all kinds of things. But given that most of us are not going to live forever, his name is Lazarus in the book. You've got to
Right.
be very thoughtful and careful about the relationships you do engage with, and it's. I just don't see it working. I just don't see it working. And everywhere I've observed it, and I'm not going to say much more than that. Everywhere I've observed it, it's failed ultimately.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Well, thank you, sir,
Sure.
and I'm looking forward to you debating Prager. I think
Am I
that will
debating Prager?
be
Is anybody
very.
arranging that? I haven't heard about that.
I thought you were debating Prager on. I thought you were going back on Rubin to debate Prager.
Nobody's told me about this, so if Ruben invites me, I will definitely do it.
I would love to see that. I think that would be
Well,
a
write
great
Ruben,
debate.
tweet Ruben or something, and let him know that you would love to see it.
I will. I
Sounds
will do
good.
that.
Oh, excellent.
All
Thanks
right.
for
Thank you,
calling
sir.
in.
Have a good day.
Thanks. All right.
Cheers.
There we go, pushing the envelope again. And yeah, let me just emphasize that these things, particularly in relationships, objectivism is a young philosophy. I I think that there's a lot still to be learned about human psychology and about what is possible and what is not possible to individuals. And I don't know. I don't know what the answers are long term. I'm certainly not a psychologist of relationships and sex to be able to give you guidance on these things. On the pushing the envelope stuff. Go push the envelope yourself. Try it, but make sure you know what you're doing. That's the most important thing. Make sure you know what you're doing, and go into whatever relationship you go into with your eyes wide open and with a strong sense of who you are and what you are and what you want and what you're capable of. All right. That's it for. We had a second caller, but he's gone or she's gone, or maybe I answered the question already. All right, we're switching to politics because most people want me to talk about politics and economics. That's the facts. I know some of you enjoy hearing me squirm at having to talk about sex and relationships or epistemology. I get very similar response for both. All right, here's the question that actually won the vote count. And if you don't like this question, then you need to participate in the vote so that your other questions rise up to the top. And the way to participate in the vote is by contributing on Patreon to my account, and then you can participate in the vote. And if you give $25 a month or more, you get to actually propose. No, actually $10 a month or more, you get to actually propose stuff. All right. So you know what? We're gonna take a quick break because I keep forgetting to do these, and we're gonna take a quick break, and then we'll come right back.
The Ayn Rand Institute fights for the future. Throughout history, people all over the world have been fighting tyrants in the form of kings, dictators, and governments who propagate the immoral idea that your life does not belong to you. This is why the Ayn Rand Institute is important. We promote Ayn Rand's philosophy, Objectivism, that not only teaches you as an individual the principles needed to live a happy and successful life, but also the moral foundation for striving to achieve such a life. Ayn Rand said that anyone who fights for the future lives in it today. Join us in that fight. Go to AynRand.org today.
All right, we are back. And so this is question one. But what about the roads? Funding a proper government in a voluntary system. What, if anything, is done with free riders? Okay, so there are three questions here. But this is what you voted. Number one question. So this is what you get. All right. So what about the roads? Well, I don't see any reason why roads can't be private. Quite the contrary. I see lots of reasons why they would be. There are lots of advantages to private roads. They'd be better kept. Roads would be built where they're actually needed. No bridges to nowhere. There'd actually have to be some kind of return on them. So people would have to be, or on some roads at least, and people would have to be focused on gaining that return, whether it's through tolls and building roads only where tolls make sense. But the world of technology today has made all this so much easier. So you could argue that this was a tricky question 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. But today with GPSs and little sensors you can put on a car that pick up the GPS, you can basically put a sensor on every car. And basically what the sensor does is keep track of every road you travel on. and then the owners of that road bill you for using their road, and you only pay for the roads that you travel on. And it's pretty easy. But even if that weren't the case, there are lots of arrangements where developers would have an interest, for example, in building a road to a neighborhood where they were selling homes and building all the roads within the neighborhoods. And they would even have an incentive to maintain those roads long term, because that would be one of the selling points about this neighborhood. You come to the neighborhood and we guarantee that we will maintain this road over the long run. We will continue to own this road, or we will sell it to you and you can form a corporation. Or there are lots of different ways in which you would do this. Insurance companies, I had this idea years and years ago, of insurance companies have an incentive to build roads and maintain them and make sure they're good, because to the extent that the roads are bad, more accidents happen, and more claims are filed against the insurance companies. But more than that, they would have an incentive to set up speed limits and things like that, because they don't want people to drive unsafely, and maybe insurance companies would take over the road system. Businesses would have, certainly trucking companies and other businesses that want to transport materials from point A to point B would have an incentive to build roads. And yeah, there would be free riders on some of those roads, but it would be worth it. Who cares about the free riders when you get to use your road to deliver your goods and make a living that way? So there are a million different ways in which this could happen. But I think that the GPS technology has basically made any argument against private roads moot. I mean, it's so easy to privatize the roads even today, given GPS technology, and bill people for what they actually use, in a sense, a sophisticated GPS satellite-based toll system, that it's easy. It's easy. But there's a principle here that I think is important. And that is that the government is responsible only for one thing. We create government because there's one thing that is anti-markets, anti-property rights, anti the ability of us to produce, and that is force. Force is the enemy of the human mind. Force is the enemy of reason. Force is what cripples us and makes us unable to think and produce and create and innovate. And therefore, we institute governments in order to extract force from society, in order to hold the monopoly over the use of retaliatory force. And that's it. Anything else, including building roads, requires government to use force, not in retaliation, but to confiscate, to steal, to take. And therefore, it's wrong. It's wrong. So what about the roads? What about the railroads? What about the bridges? What about, I don't know, whatever? Fill in the blank. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I don't care if I have an answer or don't have an answer to the technicalities of how the private sector would actually address it. It's not the job of government. It's not the job of government, period. Because the only job of government is to extract force from society. And when government gets in the business of imposing its force on society, it is violating rights, it is therefore contradicting its very nature. And only bad things can happen from that. Only bad things can happen from that. And the beauty of it is, really the beauty of it is, that in a true free market, who knows how problems will be solved? Who knows what kind of entrepreneurs and what kind of ideas people will come up with to solve problems? Problems are just, who among you would have come up with an iPhone? Who among you would have come up with an internet, or come up with I don't know, all the stuff around me? All the stuff around me was invented by somebody who I would have never thought of it. So why would I think that I could think of the way the market would solve the transportation problem? I can't. I mean, What about those? Elon Musk has these ideas of these tunnels where you zoom people through at unbelievable speeds. I forget the name of these things. Um, I mean, maybe we don't need roads. Maybe there are other ways to move people from one place or another. Somebody mentioned on the chat flying cars and helicopters and all kinds of things that without government regulations and controls and restrictions, and without the government trying to run everything and driving out private capital and intervening and pulling a gun to our head when we try to innovate, just imagine what those innovations could be. Could be. I'm right. So the principle that we have to stick to is the government cannot use force in order to achieve its aim, unless it's using force in retaliation to protect me and you. That's it. And then the marketplace will sort everything else out. I have complete confidence. Somebody on the chat mentioned earlier that in the Soviet Union, they used to say, yeah, but if the government doesn't produce shoes, who will? And how will they know what shoes to produce? The government knows exactly what the citizens needs, and they know how to produce exactly the right shoes for everybody. We know how ridiculously stupid that is after the fall of the Berlin Wall. We knew it way before that, but we certainly should be able to know that today. But so why do we think the government knows how to produce roads? Knows which roads? What are the right roads and what are the wrong roads? What two cities need to be connected and what two cities don't need to be connected? What neighborhoods where roads should go? What are the standards? What kind of roads should they go? Under the ground should they go? Bypasses? Who knows what the right way to do this is? So I am not a central planner. I don't pretend to know what the market solutions to problems are going to be. All I know with certainty is, because 250 years of experience has showed me this, is one, that markets can solve problems like this, and two, that when the government gets involved in it, it violates rights and it's economically a disaster. And roads are a good example of that. Just look at the road system we have today. Bridges are falling apart, potholes everywhere, huge amounts of money are spent to fix them, but the traffic jams everywhere. Everywhere you go, there are traffic jams. Imagine if you had to stand in line at the grocery store, like you have to stand in line, in a sense, on the 405 or the 5 in Los Angeles, or the 10 or the 55 or any of these highways. I mean, you wouldn't tolerate that for 5 minutes at a grocery store, right? But on a highway, we go, well, that's life. That's the way it is. But the only reason we say, hey, that's life, that's the way it is because government is running those roads. All right, funding a proper government. So I've advocated that a proper government, Ayn Rand advocated that a proper government be funded voluntarily through fees for some services, and then the rest voluntarily. And the question is, what if anything is done with free riders, free loafers, people, freeloaders who don't pay their taxes but are still basically using the police and military resources that are out there? And my view is that I think there would be few freeloaders, because I think most people, good people, the kind of people who would lead us to a world in which the government was this small and this constrained and this limited, those kind of people would want to pay their way. But if there were people who didn't, then what I would suggest is that I think the government should do this anyway. The government should make public how much money everybody gives it. Partially, this is a way to prevent fraud, right? A way to prevent influence seeking. We know exactly who gave whom what, right? So if somebody is trying to buy the government out, we know it because they're giving, I don't know, millions and millions of dollars and disproportionately, and we can address that. But also, we then know who is not giving. And I think the best way to deal with freeloaders in such a system is by social, or people trying to buy themselves the government, through social, shunning, through not having anything to do with that person, not selling them goods in your store. You see, in my world, in an objectivist world, you could discriminate, not selling them stuff in the store, not talking to them, not letting them participate. You can't make lobbying somebody's suggesting would making lobbying illegal. You can't make lobbying illegal. What is, because you can't define lobbying clearly. And a lot of lobbying is behind closed doors. All you have to do is make everything visible so that everybody knows what's going on. And if you live in a culture in which somebody buying some special favors from the government is unacceptable, and you observe that behavior, then I think a society will know what to do with the people involved. Kick the guy out of government, fire the guy from the government, and ostracize the person who's trying to achieve that control. So I think social pressure is an incredible force in such a context, both for freeloaders and for the people paying too much into the system. All right, we've got a caller. Again, I want to make sure that this caller is calling about this topic. I wish I had a call screener, but to get to call screener, we have to get to something like $10,000 on Patreon. And so you guys are going to really have to kick it up and really kick it into gear to get there. But we're not quite there yet. All right, I'm going to take the call, assuming it's on the topic. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Hey, this is Michael.
Hey, Michael, you're back again.
Wait a second. I thought you were opening it up for all topics.
No, not all topics.
That's
just
why
this
I
topic.
called back in.
No, I haven't opened it up for all topics. No, I'm still going down the list. Okay, I'm going to hang up on you, but
I'll riff on this.
I was gonna put you on hold until I opened it up.
Okay, well, go ahead. Just put me on hold.
Okay, I'm gonna put you on hold, and then I'll take you once we get to the open Q&A section. All right, we've got. All right, so that was that's that question. I'm gonna take a quick break here, and then we're gonna go to the next highest ranked question. Actually, question number 3. Which is coming up. All right, let's see. We're going to go with this one.
The Ayn Rand Archives has more than 1,500 photographs of Ayn Rand, her life, and her work. Become an ARI monthly sustainer today, and you are eligible to receive the Ayn Rand photo series every month. These high-quality reproductions, each with historical anecdotes provided by the archives, will be shipped to you in a protective sleeve and are suitable for framing or for collecting in a photo album. Becoming an ARI monthly sustainer is the most convenient way to contribute. Your automated monthly gift of just $25, that's less than $1 per day, helps to sustain our vital programs and qualifies you to receive the Ayn Rand photo series. When your first monthly contribution is made, you'll receive the first set of 2 photos. Then for as long as you contribute at least $25 a month, you'll receive an additional set of 2 photos each month. For residents outside of the United States, a monthly donation of $50 is required to receive the photo series. Signing up is quick and easy. Just go to AynRand.org/donate and look for the link at the bottom of the page to become an ARI sustainer.
All right, we're back. And you've still got a few more days to contribute to the Ayn Rand Institute and get a tax deduction for this year. So please do so in addition to your supporting me on Patreon, for which you do not get a tax deduction. Sorry. I am a for-profit entity, not a non-for-profit. Okay. The primary reason I'm running these ads is, A, to support the Ayn Rand Institute and remind you of its existence. And B, it's because these are gaps that I'm creating so that when this is edited, we can then put in real ads. So when you listen to the podcast, you hear real ads for which I get money. So it's a way to pay, again, for the show, for the marketing, for one day a call screener, for all of this stuff. Another way in which we're trying to raise money to make the show self-sufficient, self-funding. All right. Let's see. So the next show, creating a minimal government. Why would an objectivist government work where the Articles of Confederation failed? Well, I think because the Articles of Confederation did not do a good job at presenting a real system of government to protect individual rights. The Articles of Confederation were allowed the states, in a sense, too much freedom freedom in a weird way, freedom to violate individual rights. For example, by charging tariffs, even on domestic products continuing slavery. I mean, unfortunately, the Constitution did the same thing, but that had to be resolved in the end by a civil war. The Constitution couldn't be consistently practiced with slavery, so it had to be resolved in some way. The Articles of Confederacy were too loose. What a limited government would really look like is a system of government created by the founders, a separation of powers, a division of labor in that sense, but also a way to checkmate each other. But with much more explicit separation between government politics and economics, government politics and education, government politics and science. So a much more explicit constitution that was much more explicit about what individual rights were and how government was set up to protect specifically individual rights. Because individual rights are not really mentioned in the Constitution, they're only mentioned in the Declaration of Independence, the relationship between individual rights and between government and what its role is too loose to survive 200 years of attack by its philosophical enemies. Now, let me also add that no minimal government will survive if the philosophy of the people is anti-minimal government. You can create the best minimal government in the world, but if people don't want minimal government, they will lose it. And this is why objectivists emphasize that what we really need is a change in philosophy, an ideological change. What we really need is for people to change, for people to become ideologically for limited government, ideologically for individual rights, ideologically against government intervention in their lives. And the intellectuals, the entire intellectual class has to believe this, or at least the significant majority of them have to believe this. And unless they believe this, unless they're teaching it, unless they're educating that, unless the people ultimately believe it, you'll never get it. And you'll never be able to sustain it. So what you need to start with is an ideological revolution, not a political revolution. So what happened with the Founding Fathers is they got most of that right, and the people around them kind of agreed with them, but didn't have a philosophical foundation for that. They didn't really understand what this thing, individual rights and freedom and all this stuff was. And then when America was attacked by philosophy from outside of America that was antagonistic to limited government, it had no answer. Because the intellectuals never really developed an ideology of freedom, an ideology of liberty. They never developed a philosophy of freedom and liberty. The first person ever to develop a consistently integrated philosophy for freedom, for limited government, is Ayn Rand. So it's not a surprise that not only the Articles of Confederation didn't work, but that the Constitution didn't work, because they weren't based thoroughly enough on a whole philosophical system. Now that we have objectivism, if we can ever convince enough people of it, then when it's tried again, the people will have the intellectual ammunition to protect themselves. So if you will, the founders built this magnificent building, skyscraper, on quicksand. The quicksand is philosophy. The quicksand is the moral foundations of a free society. They didn't have them. They didn't have a proper, fully consistent, worked out, intellectually rigorous moral foundation for free society. So that's what we need. That's what we need. All right. Let's see. We've got a call. I'm assuming the call is going to be on this issue. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Aloha, it's Stuart.
Hey, Stuart. How's it going?
Yeah, So I wanted to ask you about this topic. I wanted to ask you about a term often thrown around by libertarians, and it's minarchist. And they say in the liberty movement there are
Yeah.
two groups of people: the anarchists and the minarchists. And I think that term minarchist is very manipulative because I knew this anarchist who kept saying, "Are you an anarchist?" And I would say, "No." Then he would say, "Oh, you're a minarchist then." And at first I said, "Well, okay then." And I noticed that after a while he would keep on saying, "Okay, so do you know what you get when government is taken to the absolute minimum? Anarchy. Therefore, minarchism, taken to its logical conclusion, is
Yeah.
anarchy.
Yeah.
So if you're not an anarchist, then you're this middle of the road milk toast.
No,
But you're still a caterpillar.
I agree
You're
with
still a
you.
caterpillar, and
I agree with you. It's an awful
yeah,
term.
and
It's not a good term because it doesn't identify what it is, what kind of government we want, and why we want it. It assumes, it buys into the idea, and a lot of minarchists, real minarchists, buy into this idea that government is a necessary evil. What can you do? Anarchy breaks into this, we need a government. We hate government. We don't believe in government. We don't think it's a good thing. But, you need it. People are just not good enough for anarchy, right? That's what minarchists are. They're the people who believe in limited government because they believe human beings are too flawed to have anarchy. And that is a milquetoast compromise. That I agree with. We're not minarchists. We believe that government is a necessary good because we believe that freedom, real freedom, necessitates government. It necessitates an entity that can objectively define the law, can objectively define property rights, and can objectively arbitrate disputes. An entity that is responsible for that objectivity and is also responsible, therefore, for the use of force in retaliation as an act of self-defense. Because we're the only ones who believe in objectivity, we're the only ones who escape the minarchy, anarchy, false alternative. Does that make sense?
yeah,
And this is the problem, that because the libertarians don't understand that fundamentally this is an epistemological issue. It's about the nature of knowledge. It's about objectivity. They can't understand what the hell we're talking about when we say anarchy is a disaster. Because most libertarians are epistemologically and even metaphysically subjectivists, and they think markets are subjectivist, epistemologically and metaphysically subjectivist, and everything is subjectivist. So, what are we insisting on? What are we insisting on this objective knowledge, or what are we insisting on this government stuff? It's just a waste of time.
yeah. I wish they would understand what you said earlier, that that force by its nature is anti-market. I wish they would understand violence cannot be privatized.
But they can't understand that because they don't understand the role of reason in human life. And it's reason that they really are objecting to. That's what really they don't want to think about, right? And that's what cripples their ability to fully understand kind of the objectivist politics. They don't understand the role of reason in human life.
Yeah.
Good.
So, thank you.
Thanks.
Mahalo.
Oh, mahalo. All right. Let's see. My New Year's news, by the way, is not related to anything regarding this show. It's related to me personally and where I'm going to be living from now on. So we're going to leave it at that for now. All right. Let's see. Okay, I've got a question here on blockchain. I'm going to leave that, put that to the side for now, because I'll have to do a whole show like on Bitcoin and blockchain, and maybe bring on somebody who actually knows what they're talking about. Are the people calling in right now? Are you calling about the topic that we've just discussed? I'm not opening it up yet to general callers. So if you're not, one went away. If you're calling about this topic, stay on the line. If you're not, press 1 to go off the queue. All right, so we've got a bunch. My guess is we've got some. Okay, somebody went away again. No. All right, so we've got some callers about the topic. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Hello, my name is Otis.
Hi, Otis. How are you?
I'm calling. I'm fine. I'm calling in from the UK.
Okay, great, great. Ooh, it's late at night.
Yeah, but actually, I was actually born in a country called Botswana in Africa. But I
Oh, wow.
recently came here to do over abroad studies, basically in biochemistry.
Yes, I
So
know where Botswana
basically,
is. I've
So
yeah, wonderful.
so basically, I've been looking through the internet and I just discovered you through a bunch of lectures that you were giving and I actually posted on YouTube. So
Excellent.
what I wanted to ask is,
Sure.
in my country, basically, people at the beginning kind of banded together to create universities, and we discovered diamonds. And ever since we discovered diamonds, government has been this arbiter which basically brought about civilization for us. It raised our quality of living because it took control over the diamonds, and basically monopolized it to some extent. But now the thing is, obviously, the government is not necessarily the best at managing every aspect of our lives. For example, like you mentioned, the government role should only be limited to protecting people and allowing them to actually engage in economic activities.
Yep.
So now my question is, how do you actually get my peers to actually have that change of mindset? Because it's definitely not sustainable having the government control every single aspect of our lives. It's just been growing. It just doesn't stop growing.
No, it
How
doesn't.
do you
And
actually
and I would actually
begin to
argue,
plant those seeds?
I would actually argue that Botswana would have been much wealthier and be doing much, much better today if when diamonds were discovered, the government had allowed, basically had limited itself to defining and protecting property rights, establishing a consistent rule of law and exercising that rule of law, and letting the wealth stay in the hands of individuals rather than the government trying to manage that wealth.
Yeah,
Now, how do you
because I always find it interesting. Yeah.
yeah, how do you convince people? It's very hard. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do on this show. That's what I try to do in my lectures. So one way is to share my lectures with your friends, and to share my lectures with your countrymen, and to invite me to come and speak in Botswana. I'd love to come to Botswana to give a talk. But it's
I'll
basically
definitely-
it's basically about ideas, right? It's basically about ideas.
Yeah.
So the only way to convince people is to educate them. It's to expose them to the new ideas and talk and talk and talk and get them reading. I would very strongly recommend Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead, and Ayn Rand's nonfiction book, Capitalism, Not Known Ideal. Try to get as many of them reading and thinking about these issues. That is the best way. That is the best way to change the country and to put it on the right track.
Because I just find it interesting that, just a couple of months ago, I was listening to a politician in the neighboring country, South Africa.
Yep.
And it's called Julius Malema. He's basically advocating for a type of socialism.
Yep.
He's a scholar of of Fidel Castro.
Yes.
He basically advocates for the government to be like the arbiter or the main or the strongest. Basically, it should be in every single industry and be the best in every single industry. And I was like, wait a minute, how is this going to work? How do we ensure that the government is the best? What's its incentive?
Well, but you can't. You can't even ask those questions because it's a false even idea. I mean, all you have to do is look at Cuba. Cuba's poor. Cuba's oppressed.
Yes.
Cuba's horrible place. And all you have to do is study and learn a little bit of history. And what you discover very quickly, and what you need to teach your countrymen, is that and South Africa it refuses to learn this lesson. But everywhere that socialism is practiced, it is a disaster. And everywhere capitalism is practiced, it is amazing at the success it has. So it's just a matter of looking at history and looking at the world around you. Why can't Botswana become the Hong Kong of Africa? Or all it needs is to copy from Hong Kong what worked in Hong Kong and apply it in Botswana. And the same with South Africa. Now, South Africa is such a rich country in minerals and in gold and diamonds and in tourism and everything else. Why isn't South Africa one of the richest countries in the world? It's got talented people. It's got smart people. It's got motivated people. The reason is socialism. The reason is the refusal of South African governments, white governments when there was apartheid, weren't capitalist. And of course, today's government is not capitalist. Why do these governments refuse to adopt the one system in human history that has actually brought poor people out of poverty and has enriched everybody who's participated in it? It's because, and as I argue in many of my talks, it's because, and this goes back to the education, it's because they refuse. The people, it's not the government's fault, it's the people refuse to embrace a true morality of capitalism, which is a morality of self-interest.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for your insight. Expect me to be calling in more often. I actually discovered
Wonderful.
you after waking up a bit late.
Well,
But thank you.
yeah, it's early in the morning in the UK, so thanks for calling, and and please listen in. And by the way, I speak in the UK often. I give a lot of talks in the UK. I'll be back in the UK in February, in the last few days in February and the first week in March. I will be in London and the surrounding areas, So hopefully you'll have a chance to come on one of my talks and we'll get to meet in person, which will be terrific. Okay, we got one more caller. Hi, you're on the Yaron Book Show. Who's this?
This is Logan. How's it going?
I'm good. What's up, Logan?
Good. So I just wanted to call in to maybe play devil's advocate for the anarchists and libertarians, because usually you're pretty nice to us, but sometimes you're kind of mean to us. So I just wanted to say that.
So what, are you trying to push me to be mean?
I don't think that...
Is that the issue? I was too nice
No.
earlier? So you're going to push? No? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that there's a lot of people that I disagree with for good reasons, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they reject reason or that they're not fully integrated. Like I would say Marxism has a pretty concrete worldview. I think it's wrong, obviously, but in any case, anarchy is really just what you said earlier. The force is the enemy of the mind and the enemy of humanity, basically.
So
and anarchists just accept that there's no exceptions for that.
No, I don't think that's true.
People get together and do it.
So I don't think that's true. So first of all, let me just say, I don't think Marxism is a reason-based philosophy. I don't think it's integrated. I think it's a whole lot of crap, and it's an awful system. It's wrong. I mean, Marx's books are wrong almost from the first sentence to the last. He has no insight. He is, there's nothing good about Marxism. Nothing. So I'm not nice to ideologies that I consider evil and murderous, because I think Marxism necessitates murder. And I think the same thing. I think to some extent the same thing is true of anarchy. Now, I don't think that anarchists don't respect reason. What I said is that anarchists don't understand the role of reason in man's life, and don't understand the relationship between force and reason. And they don't understand that knowledge is objective. Because what they want to leave to the marketplace is force. And I don't think you can have a marketplace with force. You have to be able to extract force first. This is why it's only when governments are established that are trying at least to extract force from society that you get capitalism. So it's only in the early part of the 19th century you get capitalism. When you had anarchy, most of human history, there is no capitalism. And there are no real markets. They're very, very, very primitive markets. They're the kind of markets you can get away with because there's no objective agency of force. And it's only when you're trying to establish objective standards for the use of force, which is what the English common law system tries to do in the 18th century, 19th century, and what the American system does, that you get real development of markets. So that's historically, but intellectually, you cannot leave up to people's disagreement. How are we going to decide what property rights are Well, how to define them? What counts and what doesn't count? Well, if I've got a bigger gun, I get to make the decision because there's no final arbitrator. There's no final authority. There's no way to make a decision.
I think that is and I, for the most part, I agree. I wouldn't call myself an anarchist, just because I think that we do need a court system.
Yeah.
But I'm really close to, like, I'm very much on the edge, and I think what you described is a bit of a caricature of anarchy.
No, I mean I know the full argument about competing police forces and competing judicial system, but they have this incentive to always keep the peace, and I get all that, but it's all BS. With all due respect, if you follow the logic, if you follow the most sophisticated arguments, they all fall apart because they rely on some. They rely on everybody, literally everybody, being 100% rational and good. Because as soon as one person decides that no, he's going to establish a police force and they're just going to use a big gun and they're going to take over other police forces, and if he can get the nuke first, he wins, then the whole system breaks down and there's no way to stop him. Because it's completely arbitrary. Yeah. There's nothing to stop that. And it falls apart very quickly.
The argument to that would be that.
What's that?
Oh, go ahead.
And remember, let's say there's a dispute between two court systems. I have one and you have another, and we're in a dispute. And this one court system defines property rights in way X, and my court system defines property rights in form Y. What is the resolution between the two? Well, if they're all good, if there's goodwill and everybody's happy and everybody's nice and everybody's friendly, then they negotiate some kind of compromise and we all say fine. But there are clearly issues out there all the time that people embark in, that people engage in, where there is no compromise and where there is no goodwill. And therefore somebody has to be a final authority between your court system and my court system. And the only final authority in a world like that between your court system and my court system, if they can't come to a compromise because the issue is so significant, is who has a bigger gun. And the system falls apart because of that. And I've read all the game theory stuff that they present as evidence, and oh no, that wouldn't happen. But it's just not true. It's just not true. And again, history, if you look at human history, we've lived under anarchy most of our lives, most of human history. And it was a disaster. It was really, really bad.
Well, I'm not sure if we've ever, and again, the communists would say the same thing, but we've never really had anarchy. There's always been some sort of power structure, but I don't want to take up.
Well, I would say there's always going to be some power structure if that's the limit. And yes, I think that's right. But I don't think anarchy can exist. I don't think it's possible ever to have anarchy. I think it's an impossibility in the way they conceive of it.
Okay.
All right.
Well, later on when you do open it up for everything else, I'd like to hear your thoughts on music. Just throw that in there real quick while I have you.
Oh, my God. All right. Okay, well, let's – thanks for the call. So stay on, and we'll get to that. Okay, what the hell? Let's see, what are we? I'm going to take a quick break. After the break, let me take – I'm gonna answer one more question, two questions that are related to one another, and then I'm going to just open it up. So if you want to call in with just any question you want, press 1 on your phone now, and you'll be in the queue. And we'll see how many questions there are while I take this quick break.
2017 marks the 60th anniversary of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. 12 years in the writing, it is Ayn Rand's masterwork. Despite being published 6 decades ago, the novel continues to gain recognition and profoundly influence business leaders, thought leaders, and a growing number of political leaders. Its presence in today's culture cannot be denied. The fascination with Atlas Shrugged persists because it grapples with the fundamental questions of human existence and presents radically new answers. Whether you're an adoring fan who wants to add this new addition to your personal library, or someone who wants to read the book for the first time to see what all the fuss is about, pick up your copy of Atlas Shrugged today. An updated cover for the mass market edition of the novel recently hit stores. Check it out. You can order your copy today on Amazon.
Okay, so let's cover this topic. It's more reminiscent of the first topic we covered, but I think it's an important one, and I get a lot of questions about this and kind of in writing. And I'm going to say something about it. There's a lot more to say about it. And this is the question: what is the role of passion in a career? Should Keating have focused on painting instead of pursuing architecture? And then a second question that's very much related to this is: how do you find a career you're passionate about? Well, let me say this, that I think, though, that it's really, really important ultimately to have passion in a career, to really pursue a career that you're passionate about. You're going to spend most of your time at work. You're going to spend most of your energy, most of the challenges you challenge yourself with are going to be work-related. So you want to love what you do. You don't want to be in a situation where you're doing stuff that you don't enjoy doing, where you're engaged in activities that you're not enjoying, that you're not benefiting from, that are not fun. So my view is it's crucial. Now it's hard. And what often happens is you're going to have to try stuff. And, I've had, 5 careers. I don't know how many careers I've had. And I was a civil engineer. Was I passionate about civil engineering? No. But it was all I could think about studying. Nothing else seemed to really interest me. And when I did it, I enjoyed it. I wasn't passionate about it, but I enjoyed it. But I think because I wasn't really passionate about it, I then kind of pivoted to another career, which is ultimately became a student and then a professor. Was I passionate about being a professor? Yeah, a little bit. And but I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I was good at it, and that was great. And then from from that, ultimately I got the job at the Ayn Rand Institute. Now that I was really truly passionate about. But that, and that's the career I have today, right? Speaking and advocating for Ayn Rand's ideas. But that's a career I only discovered in my, how old was I? I was 40. I was 39, right? And it's not like I wasted the first 2 careers. They were beneficial. I enjoyed them. And I learned a lot from them. I learned a lot about myself from them. And again, I enjoyed them. Now, when I mean passion, I don't mean somebody's writing here that's synonyms of pain, suffering, agony, martyrdom. No, passion means that you love it, that you enjoy it, that you get a thrill out of doing it, that you're passionate in a positive way about something. So, you've got to love what you do. There's a wonderful, wonderful speech by Steve Jobs. You can find it on YouTube. It's in a commencement address at Stanford University that he gave a long, long time ago. And you should definitely listen to that. And he talks about why it's so important that you love what you do. You love your work. And it'll take you a few tries. You're not going to hit there the first time. Or you might. Some of you know exactly what you want to do from when you're 5 years old. And that's great. Pursue it. Do everything you can to fulfill that. And if it fails, then you can look for other things to do. But hopefully it succeeds and you get to like Howard Roark knew he wanted to be an architect. And he was willing to go to the quarry and work do any kind of work in order to be an architect and ultimately to make the kind of architecture he believed in. That's the kind of integrity you need in order to really pursue your passion. Now, how do you know what your passion is? Well, a lot of introspection, a lot of thinking about what really excites you, what interests you, what you like, and then trying to find a career that fits those things that you like. So, for example, when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do when I was I was a little older because I went to the Army for 3 years. But when I was 21 and trying to figure out what I wanted to go study, I thought, well, I like math. I kind of like physics. I didn't like physics that much. I kind of like biology. Maybe I should do biology. But yeah, I don't like the lab stuff, and I wasn't that interested in like anatomy, and I certainly was not interested in like classifying flowers. That drove me nuts. Classifying plants, I hated that, and that was associated with to me with biology. I wanted to do like genetic engineering. I thought that would be fascinating, but then I kept thinking about classifying plants, and it just that took out all the passion from me. Um, I, uh, but I knew I liked math, so I thought, okay, engineering sounds good, but what kind of engineering? Because I don't really want to sit in an office all day, because I'd get bored if I was just sitting in an office. I want to do something that's active, that's engaged, that's out there in the world. And so I could have gone into programming or computer science, which I should have if I wanted to make a lot of money. I should have. Looking back, it was a big mistake. I was just, my class did very, very well. The ones who went into computer science, because they just hit just at the right time as technology was taking off. So I said I wanted something that there might be an outdoor issue factor with it. I might be able to get out from under my desk, maybe interacting with other people. And that's how I came up with civil engineering. You get to build buildings, you get to go outside, you get to see what you built out there in reality. And I think that's what you need to do. You need to introspect. And then, when I was a student, I took some finance class. I said, oh, yeah, I like this finance stuff. And I taught a class when I was in graduate school. And I said, I kind of like teaching. This is fun. So becoming a professor, combining the kind of the finance and the math and the teaching all together. But it came from experience and introspection, constantly experience and introspection. That keeps improving you. And you'll get to fine tune what your career should be as you go along. But of course, Keating should have been a painter. Of course, he should have been a painter. You've got to follow your passion. If you have a passion, you've got to follow it. Now, at some point, you might decide, look, I can't make a living at this. I have to do something else. Fine, but at least then you'll know that you tried. But living without the knowledge that you tried, that would be horrible. It'd be a horrible life. Values. Life is about the pursuit of values. A career is a value. One of the most important values you have. And because it's related to purpose. It's related to a cardinal objectivist value called purpose. So a career is a crucial purpose. A crucial value. So you have to think, and introspect what kind of career I want. Because I want to be able to really be good at it. And to be really good at something, you have to really love it. You have to really, really love it. All right. Let's see. We're going to take a couple of callers here. So I'm opening it up to anybody who wants to call. 347-324-3075. 347-324-3075. We've got a little bit of time for just an open Q&A. Anything you want to ask about. Hi, you're on the Ron Brook Show.
Hey, Ron.
Hey, Michael.
Again.
All right. So
I've got two questions. One's really simple. It shouldn't take long. The other one's kind of serious.
Okay. Try with let's start with the simple one.
Okay. So from an objectivist worldview, this is like a classic psychological question.
Yeah.
There's a trolley. You're a train operator.
Yeah.
The train is about to hit 5 people, but you can switch the tracks.
Yep.
And make it hit 1.
Yep.
What would be the most ethical way, from a objectivist point of view, of handling that situation? Because saving
I get it. Look, there is no answer to that question. That's the objectivist answer to that question. It's a bullshit question. It's a bullshit question taught at Harvard, and the whole course on ethics is centered around it. And it doesn't matter. Either way, bad stuff happens. Generally, I guess one person dying is better than 5, but you're screwed either way, and it doesn't matter. Ayn Rand wrote about this. Lifeboat situations are not what ethics is about. Ethics is about what you do every day. It's about living. It's about what happens to you every single day. It's not about what happens to you in a lifeboat. In a lifeboat, you throw the guy opposite you off the boat, you jump the boat off yourself, or you both die. All answers are equally valid.
Okay.
All right. Yep.
I guess my second question is, All right.
By the way,
when
let
you're
me just
talking
refer
about
people,
passion-
before you ask it, let me just refer people to the essay where she writes about this. It's called The Ethics of Emergencies. I think it's either the second or the third essay in The Virtue of Selfishness. Highly, highly recommend it because you get these kind of emergency lifeboat scenario types of questions all the time. Ayn Rand addresses this directly in that essay beautifully, beautifully. All right, go ahead.
Right. And I know you were talking a little bit about purpose, and
Yep.
I'm very fortunate to know exactly what I want to do,
Good.
and I've always kind of wanted this. I grew up in a kind of an academic household, and my mom is very smart, and I was always like inclined to take IQ tests and stuff like that. So I knew a lot about my intellect early.
Yeah.
But there's a big problem with me, which I've tried to overcome my entire life, which is I know you don't put a whole lot of stock in IQ tests, but if you take a proper one, like from Mensa or something,
Yep.
it breaks your intelligence down in like 5 different categories.
Yep.
And I'm like average at best, if not deficient in the verbal category.
Okay.
And all these years that I spend my free time, my whole teenage years and up till now, I watch videos like on you, and I read your books, and I read Ayn Rand, and I read Friedman and all that, and I really want to get into that sort of thing with lecturing and stuff like that. But
do you think I don't know what verbal
it's really
intelligence
hard.
means. What does verbal intelligence mean?
Verbal intelligence is like, okay, so let me just give you an example. Like antiquated. Antiquated means old-fashioned.
Yep.
Right, and it's like an intelligent word. It's easy. It's kind of like knowing what the right word to say in a given situation
Okay,
is.
so here's the point. So here's
clarity.
here's the point I'll make for you. My guess is that I have a very low verbal intelligence. Because
Okay.
if you listen to my lectures and you listen to these podcasts, my vocabulary is very limited. I don't use fancy words. You put me and William F. Buckley in the same room, half the time I don't know what he's talking about, because he uses words I don't understand. And he would think I was just a nobody, like a working class nobody, right? So I don't put any stock in these things. I really don't. You want to be a speaker and a writer and stuff like that? Go do it. Go learn. You'll have to work hard. You'll have to figure it out, and you can do it. It really is the problem is you feel like you're determined. You feel like this is your destiny because the IQ test said so, and that is very dangerous.
Well, no, not necessarily that. It's like the IQ test would suggest that I'd be a better novelist than anything else. I would be like a Thomas Jefferson or something.
Yeah, but forget what the IQ test
barely
shows.
speak.
Go do what you love doing. And practice, work hard at it, and you can become as good as the amount of practice you put into it, given that you're smart already, right?
Well, okay, just parting thing, I guess.
Yeah.
If there was any way that you could maybe help somebody become more fluent verbally, do you have any advice on that? Because I have gotten better, but it's taken me 10 years of studying and
Go
practicing,
teach.
and I've just gotten
Go get it.
marginally better.
Go teach. Go get a job. If you don't have a PhD
Well, I'm
and you
a
can't,
teacher.
you're a teacher. So just teach.
Yeah.
Just practice. The other thing to do is go do Toastmasters. Go Toastmasters or some place where you get experience kind of public speaking, where there's a format and there's strangers in the room and you have to just speak intelligently about a topic. It's all about practice.
Okay.
And then watch people who are really good at it. I mean, I'm good at it, but I'm good at it with a limited vocabulary, if you will. Jordan Peterson is great at it. He's much more erudite. There's a word I've never used in my life, but it seems appropriate here. He's much more erudite than I am, right? But watch him because he's very, very, very good at what he does. So I admire people like that. Watch public speakers, see how they construct what they say and how they engage the audience, and just practice it. Go out there and get find groups of people and just talk in front of them, and don't be embarrassed, and just do it. That's my view.
Well, as you know, I do follow Jordan Peterson very closely.
Yeah. The other thing is, here's some other piece of advice. There is a course given by Leonard Peikoff called Objective Communication, which I took, 20, 30 years ago, which is excellent about how to verbally communicate. And it's available on the Ayn Rand Institute campus for free. So go and take that. Listen to that course and stick with it, because it takes a while, and it's very objectivist. But stick with it, and I think you'll enjoy it and learn a lot from it. All right?
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for calling. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for following what we do here. All right. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Hi, this is Paul.
Hey, Paul. What's up?
I had a question on metaphysics, if you don't mind.
On what?
Metaphysics?
Meta-ethics. Okay. I didn't hear you for a second. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm currently reading Dr. Peikoff's book, Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand, and he has a section in there where it's called Metaphysically Given as Absolute.
Yes.
And a line that he has says, no alternative to a fact of reality is possible or imaginable. And that line is causing me a bit of trouble, particularly the word imaginable there, because it gives the example of a solar system as metaphysically given.
Yes.
And I can imagine a solar system with 7 planets or 10, even though, the metaphysical fact is that 8 planets exist. So I was wondering if you could offer a bit of clarification or explanation on the phrasing there.
Oh, my God. Do you know, can you give me the page?
Yeah, it's page 23.
23, because I have it right in front of me. 23. Where in the page? The metaphysical given is absolute. The objective. Okay. The objectivist view of existence culminates in the principle that no alternative to a fact of reality is possible or imaginable. All such facts are necessary. In Ayn Rand's words, the metaphysically given is absolute. So, what do you mean? Now, granted, I can't speak for Leonard Peikoff. He's a genius and knows objectivism as a core philosophy much better than I do. But let me try to channel Leonard. Imaginal here is not the sense of can you imagine it like in a sci-fi book? Can you create an alternative universe in which things are different? Because obviously that can be true. I mean, Leonard is a big fan, or was a fan of science fiction writing, or is a fan of science fiction writing, and so it's obvious that in a science fiction book you can imagine all kinds of things being different than they are as metaphysically given in the world. It's in terms of cognition, that is, in terms of our thinking, there can't be anything alternative to enter our thinking. So while we can imagine it in a story separate from our world, separate from the day-to-day, when we think about the world, all that matters are facts. All that matters is reality. Our imagination in that respect is irrelevant to what to the actual thinking right here, right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank
Okay.
you.
So it's imagination in that context. It's in the context of cognition, or in the context of consciousness. When we look out there into the world and see the world as it is, imagination is irrelevant. What's relevant, the only thing that's relevant, and that's the point he's making here. That's the point of the metaphysically given is absolute. The only thing that is real, that is relevant to our consciousness and therefore to our thinking, is what is. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
My pleasure. All right, we've got one more question. What happened to the guy who's going to ask me about music? Where did he go? I think it was Logan. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
It's Otis again. I just wanted to ask you real quick.
Sure.
So in my country and in other African countries, we have a situation whereby China is expanding and actually looking to, engage in trade with people from
Yeah.
Africa. For example, like Kenya.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
obviously, they've had benefits there. So now there's this persistent idea that's being perpetuated amongst people basically in my society that, that is kind of fear mongering. I think that
Yeah.
China
Not
is
just in
type
your
of
society.
colonialism 2.0.
Yeah, here in America,
But-
we've
but-
got
but
Donald
what's
Trump
happening-
with the same kind of fear mongering.
Oh my God! Because obviously in Africa we have this history of colonialism, and we're like, oh,
I know.
China's colonialism 2.0.
But it
But
isn't
from my
colonialism
experience-
2.0 if it's trade. What you want is to encourage trade.
Yeah.
If the Chinese want to come and invest in your country, that's a wonderful thing. Capital will
Yeah.
flow in, which will create jobs and opportunities for people. So no, I'm a huge supporter of global free trade of all kinds. And I wouldn't put any constraints on it as long as your government protects the individual rights of its citizens, which is the only thing that is important. Unfortunately, Trump and his ilk and people and generally, I think globally, becoming a phenomena of this idea that trade, the international trade, is somehow evil and bad and destructive, and that's awful. I mean,
Because-
go back and read *The Wealth of Nations* by Adam Smith.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, from my experience, from the time in which the Chinese actually established themselves in my country, they brought all kinds of technologies to us, like radios, like
absolutely.
they actually built the first spaghetti bridge in our country.
Yep.
That was amazing. And so this idea that if we allow them to continue improving our lives, it will end in our destruction or they'll steal our land. I'm like, how is that possible? We have a government. Are they just gonna replace the government or something like that? But yeah.
I mean, the
that's
only
a
way
very
they can
good,
replace the government is through a
introspection.
revolution. But absolutely, as long as your
Yes.
government protects the individual rights of your people, there's nothing to be afraid of in the Chinese. And as I've said many times on the show, I think I articulated pretty well the last show I did on Saturday. The U.S. economy the U.S. economy and the African economies have benefited unbelievably. It's hard to measure how much we have benefited from trade with China over the last 30 years. On net, we have benefited even more than how much China has benefited. So Donald Trump is exactly wrong about his position on China and about and your government, the people scaremongering in your country are absolutely wrong about this issue with China. Let me great. So thanks, Otis. Thanks for calling. I hope, as I said, I hope to meet you when I visit the UK next time. We've got one more caller here, but I don't know if Logan, who was going to call me about music, is calling in. So call in, Logan, if you want to ask me about music. It's a fun topic. Let me just give a plug for my show this coming Saturday. My show on the Blaze, Radical Capitalist, is going to be a review of 2017. So it will be a review of what I think are the most important stories and the most important things that have happened during 2017. What's important, what's not important, what my assessment is, and maybe a peek into 2018, although I might leave that for the following weekend, what my expectations are for 2018. All right, here we go. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Liam.
Hey,
Actually,
Liam.
I had called in earlier. I had one other question for
Go
you,
ahead.
though. As an objectivist, I find myself in debate with a friend of mine who is a doctor of philosophy, and she's a classic academic, and she has a very typical kind of looks down her nose at objectivism because it wasn't invented by an academic. So my question for you is, do you have any great debating points that you usually use when you debate people who are doctors of philosophy or high-ranking academic types?
Not really. I mean, I don't. I find it very difficult to debate academic philosophers. They speak a different language. They think in completely different terms than I do. And I find it really, really hard. And you're right. They don't respect, they don't respect anybody who talks plain English, which is what Ayn Rand did and what I tried to do, because they have this other way of thinking about it. So no, I don't have any particular advice other to give her the virtue of selfishness to read. And if she doesn't get it, there's nothing I'm going to say that's going to convince her.
Fair enough. I mean, I've noticed when debating, to me it's funny because she's a classic philosopher and an anarchist, which to me is always a morally indefensible argument, given to the fact that essentially you're just trying to create a collection of warring tribes that want to murder each other, which is, to me, all I've ever seen anarchy ever really do. It's kind of like the reverse bad opposite of communism. Instead of having one warring tribe that's killing everybody, you just create a whole bunch of them. But yeah, I've noticed this with academics, that anytime I speak to academics, they have this real look down their nose look at it, and they never seem to be able to point to anything that they believe in that works. So I was just curious if you had anything, but if you don't, you don't.
No, I don't. It's frustrating. I know.
Yeah, it is, because it's sort of you're not one of us. It's a very you're not in the club sort of feel.
Yep.
But again,
and they feel like superior, and they look down on you, and they're full of it, and yet they're the ones looking down on you.
Yeah. I mean, they all seem to support, to me, what are really morally bankrupt ideas. I mean, communism is really popular amongst that
those
type
academics.
of crowd.
Yep.
They all seem to either support that or anarchy, and it's kind of like, wow, you're talking about the two worst ideas to ever come out of government.
Yeah, I mean, they respect people like Noam Chomsky and Peter Singer who have evil ideas, and they think that's respectable, and yet Ayn Rand is not respectable somehow because she didn't have a PhD in philosophy. I mean, it's absurd. All right, Michael here online as a suggestion, which I think is good. There's a book that was written specifically for this academic crowd, and it's a companion to Ayn Rand studies, to the study of Ayn Rand. So I strongly recommend getting that book.
What is the name of it, sir?
It's a companion to Ayn Rand studies. It was edited by Greg Salamieri and Alan Gotthelf, and it's the introduction by Greg is like, this is why you academics should pay serious attention to what Ayn Rand has to say. It's very good.
I'll give it a read.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
All right. I see there are a couple of callers, but if you want to ask a question, you have to press 1 on your phone. Otherwise, I can't tell. You're not in the queue for the calls. All right. There we go. So press 1 on your phone so I know you're on the queue. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this? Yeah,
Hi.
you're on.
Hi, my name is Joe.
Hey, Joe. How's it going?
Hey, so I just had an idea that I wanted to throw out, and I was curious about your thoughts.
You got to speak up.
So in terms of artificial intelligence and the way that it is, expanding in the economy and will continue to kind of affect the role of human labor in the economy, I've been, often it's usually referred to in a way where we'll kind of devolve into a techno-socialist sort of, matrix-like, problems. And the idea that I, consider to be just interesting, and I'm curious your thoughts on, wouldn't if artificial intelligence is designed to, promote human flourishment, human development, peace and prosperity, why wouldn't it reach the same conclusions of objectivism and individualism in terms of the Ayn Rand mindset
because
we are superior in terms of
because artificial intelligence is a, I mean, it's not clear that it's a legitimate idea. I mean, I don't think it is a legitimate idea. Artificial intelligence cannot be conscious. So it would have to be conscious. To reach Ayn Rand's ideas, it would have to have the option of life or death. And if it was just software that could never die, then it would reach completely different conclusions. So it would have to be alive in a biological sense.
In a way,
what's that?
Well, I mean, I see what you mean, but to me, it seems so obvious, right?
But it's not.
That any, society based in coercion and collectivism is going to fail.
Yeah, but that's
and
politics. What about?
violence.
But that's politics. What about why? If this artificial intelligence was so powerful, and if its needs were met so easily, and it didn't have to eat and it didn't have to produce, why couldn't it just kill all the human beings and continue living? I mean, the point is that it's science fiction. There is no such thing as software coming alive. Life is not an issue of electrons. Life is a biological phenomena. And if you create a biological entity that's artificially created, then yes, it would come to the same conclusions of human beings, because it would face the same challenge that human beings faced, which is the challenge of life and death. And, but it's not clear. I just don't know that the whole idea of how people phrase artificial intelligence is right. They're going to destroy the jobs and all of this, because I think technology is going to evolve in a very different, much more pro-human being way. And I think intelligence is going to be integrated, technology will be integrated into our bodies, if you will, rather than compete with us. That is, we will become one with the computer rather than the computer be a competitor of ours. So I just don't know how all this is going to evolve, and I think speculating about it is not very helpful and useful, particularly since there are all these notions of singularity and computers coming conscious, which I think are just bogus. All right, it's a good question, and it's an interesting question.
Well, to me, like, it's more framed. I mean, to frame it in the sense that, like, if the computer is asked a question about, like, what is the best way to promote these values, why wouldn't it? Just in terms of the highest level compute power, it seems so obvious that if it could
compute what life or death means and what the choice of life and death is, and I don't know that a computer can do that. I don't, because I don't think we're just a computer. I don't think we're just electrons moving around, zero ones. I think there's something more to human consciousness, that a computer that we cannot mimic in programming, which and you need that something more to come to the conclusions of objectivism. You have to value life. A computer can't value life because it can't value, period. It can wait. So if you put the right weights on life, then it'll come to the same conclusion.
I agree with that. But I just think, like, in the same way that there is a clear answer, right? Like, any decently intelligent computer would recognize the flaws of communism based on any.
Yeah, it would recognize the flaws of communism, but that doesn't mean it would come up with an ethics of rational egoism.
Well, sure.
That's my point.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Sure. I agree that a computer would never come up with socialism. That's true. I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah,
I misunderstood the question. Well, but yeah, I agree with that. Okay, I've got two more questions and I've got very limited time. So I'm going to be short with you, not because I don't think it's a good question, but because I need to get to these other callers. Thanks for calling. Really appreciate it. All right, quickly, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Quick question, because I don't have a lot of time.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Sam, and I go to Menlo State University near San Francisco, and I have an economics teacher who's a full communist, Marxist, honors the whole thing, and literally has no moral boundaries based on tribal. And I don't really know how to combat this, because it's basically me against the class, and they're convinced I'm Jewish, so they don't actually hate me that much. But I'm actually white, but I'm tan, so I'm not really sure how to approach this.
Say that again. I didn't understand. What is that?
So essentially, it's me versus my classroom.
Yeah.
I go to Menlo State in California. It's
Okay.
right next to San Francisco. And my economics teacher is a complete Marxist, communist.
I get that.
And all of her minions are against me. And I don't really know how to defend some of my points, as I'm very limited into what I'm actually being taught in my economics class in the first place.
Well, I mean, the best thing is to try to get a better sense of economics. And for that, you just need to read. I didn't understand what they thinking you were Jewish had anything to do with it.
Oh, I'm tan, and so the teacher kind of asked me if I was Jewish or not, and I shrugged, and then she kind of took it as such, and that's why she thinks I might be. So she's a little bit nicer to me than I think otherwise.
Oh, she's afraid of discriminating.
Exactly.
I see.
So I have that working in my favor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would just get educated on good economics, which means start by reading Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt, and then go on if you to read some of Ludwig von Mises's work.
I was gonna say, let me grab a pen real quick so I can write these down. 1 second. Sorry.
That's fine. So Economics in One Lesson.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I should have prepared myself for this. All right, you said Economics by whom?
Economics in One Lesson by Henry.
Economics in One Lesson
by Henry Hazlitt.
Henry Hazlitt. Okay.
Yes. It's not easy to read because it was written in
second?
1947, but it's perfect.
Okay.
And then I would read von Mises, Vonmisses, Ludwig von Mises. Pretty much anything he wrote.
V-O-N-N.
V-O-N Mises, Misses. And then there's a bunch of other books. Okay. Just look at free market economic books. Thomas Sowell's book on economics. Thomas Sowell from Stanford is not bad. And there's a bunch of others. Just look for free market economics. The other book I would recommend is by my two books. One is Free Market Revolution. It's called, just look my name. It's Free Market Revolution. Equal is Unfair. And they have a lot of data and a lot of stuff on economics. But the pure economic stuff you get from Hazlitt, Mises. Get one of Milton Friedman's books. They're pretty good and easy to read. So Milton Friedman is the other one. All right, I have to go to this other caller.
Right,
so that should keep you busy for a while. All right.
All right, thank you very much.
My
Have
pleasure.
A good night. Bye.
My pleasure. Good luck. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Hey, it's Logan calling back about music.
All right, so I don't have a lot of time, so it better be an easy question. Go for it.
It should be easy. I was just wondering what you consider to be good music and what or why. What do you value in music?
That's not easy. So let's be clear about something, because I noticed somebody asked this question on Facebook, and I want to be very clear. So there's no such thing as objectivist music. Objectivism is a philosophy.
Yeah, agreed.
There's an objectivist view of music. There's an objectivist theory of music, approach to music based on objectivism. But there's no objectivist music. There's no objectivist art. The only objectivist art ever written was Ayn Rand. So there can be art that objectivists like. Now, I love classical music. I love anything primarily from Beethoven to Rachmaninoff and a lot of stuff in between and a lot of different composers and a lot of different stuff. I like, so why do I like it? Because it's emotionally engaging. It's melodic. It's got good rhythms. It just gets it for whatever reason. And I don't think we have a solid understanding of how music works exactly. It stimulates a real emotional positive response from me. And I think objectively, although I can't prove this, classical music is complex and deep and evokes really deep emotions when you give it a chance. I think too many people just listen to music superficially, quickly, in the background. Classical music in particular needs to be listened to, active listening. You need to close the blinds, shut out all the lights, in a sense, come as close as possible to meditation, and focus in on the music and only on the music. And if you do that, then what you discover is the real depth of emotion and depth that is characteristic of it. I mean, for background music, for just driving in the car, for casual music, I like a lot of different music, anywhere from jazz to and I sometimes go to jazz concerts to 30s and 40s popular music to rock and roll to rock to pop to country to blues and Brazilian music, bossa nova, and all kinds of music. So I'm very eclectic when it comes to popular music. Anywhere from Pink Floyd to I don't know, Garth Brooks. But that's all just casual background, unserious, fun kind of stuff. It's not what I take real aesthetic experience to mean.
Okay. Do you have time for a quick related question to that, sort of on the opposite end of it?
Okay.
There's a lot of music that I really like where the subject matter is often very dark of the lyrics. I mean, it would sort of be focusing on maybe the worst parts of human experience, but it's really good, and it gives you an emotional reaction, and it's very musically
Well, but what do you mean
complex.
That it's focused on negatives? Is that because of the lyrics or the music?
It's the lyrics, and they're based on the experiences of
but often the lyrics have nothing to do with the music. And that's why I often like to listen to music in languages I don't understand. I love opera because it's better not to understand what they're actually singing about. And I like Brazilian music, and I don't understand a word that they're saying. Because what I think the essential in music is the music, not the lyrics. Pink Floyd is very dark, but I love their melodies. They just have these life-affirming melodies, and the melodies are more important to me than the lyrics. And generally in music, I pay little attention to the lyrics, and I pay more attention to the actual music. And the actual music needs to be life-affirming in some way. It needs to be pro-thinking, pro-living in some way. And what that means, I can't tell you because I don't know enough about music to tell you, but I feel it, I guess. And music is the one form of art where it's very difficult to tell what is the metaphysical value judgment of the composer, because we don't understand how to translate musical notes, melodies, harmonies, all of that stuff into metaphysical value judgments. I can do that with a painting or with a novel is easier because they're more conceptual. Music is non-conceptual, so it's the hardest. But trying to make it conceptual by giving it lyrics doesn't really solve it, because sometimes there'll be a conflict between the music and the lyrics themselves. I also like a lot of music that when you listen to, you say, that's sad music, because it's so beautiful, because you can interpret it not as sad, but as reflective or introspective or considering, or, so there's a variety of different ways to interpret or experience music free of its lyrics. All right, now I really have to go.
Yeah.
But we can continue this conversation another time. It really is. Music is really, really interesting. Even though, and it's fun sometimes to talk about stuff you don't really understand, because it's a way of pushing kind of the boundaries of your own mind. Okay, thanks everybody.
Well,
thanks for listening.
90 seconds.
Yeah, we need a shutdown because recording is going to be shut down here in a second. Thanks for all of you who asked questions. Thanks for you submitted questions. Don't forget to make a contribution on Patreon before the year ends, and don't forget to listen to my show on Saturday and tomorrow and the day after, because on Saturday at least we'll be doing a year in review. Tomorrow we're doing a news briefing. All right, you're listening to Yaron Brook Show, and we'll be back tomorrow. Bye.